legally in the state of Ohio, you can only own up to 4 possums that were obtained through a licensed breeder. So legally, I'm only 4 possums in an oversized hoodie.
So I've had this idea for a while to do kind of like author interviews, but more casual, more like two friends catching up over coffee. Partly because I feel like some author interviews are just a bit too formal, and I love seeing like the love and passion just seeping through, so I want to allow for that. But I haven't done them yet because honestly they're fucking terrifying. Like my social anxiety screams every time I even think about it, but they say you should do the scary thing, so here we are. Hello, I'm Remilia. I'm an indie author, and today I'm having an author chat with the man, the myth, the legend, or for legal reasons, only 4 possums in an oversized hoodie. Andromeda Ruins.
Well, you know me, but just a general introduction. Hi-yo, I'm Andromeda Ruins. I write books and I talk about mythology a lot. I've published 2 books so far, and then I have 1 scheduled to be published next year, all surrounding like mythology classics areas. So we have Greek mythology, we have like Catholic related mythology, stuff like that. And I make it dark fantasy and horror and
That's a perfect description, actually.
Sometimes you just gotta about things, you know?
Yeah. You make things for teenage me perfectly.
And me. And me. Yeah. All those posts that are just like you should write for yourself. It's like, yes, but I'm writing for myself. That's like in high school actively trying to figure out what he's doing with his life.
Yeah, I felt that really much with Dios. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes,
practiced a lot
Dios.
for that video, actually.
The downfall to having Greek titles for my books is that not everybody speaks Greek. So I get to be like, well, this is Dios. And then the next book, once it comes out, I'm going to be like, this is Diaspora. And like have to explain like that pronunciation.
Oh, I don't think I've heard you say the name for the next books. Now I'm nervous to talk about it in the future.
Understandable.
Like, English is hard enough.
And that's why I usually refer to the books as their series name.
Yeah.
Call Me Icarus is so much easier.
But a lot less fun.
That's very true. That's very true.
It's like a small fan club to know how to actually pronounce the title.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like
I can see that. It's like the Andromeda Ruins fan club of like, you know how to pronounce the title. You are in this very like secluded club that I've created.
Yes, and you feel like okay, I belong here. I have accomplished something. Do you have anything you want like to specifically mention about any of them?
Books are a thing. We're writing things right now, working on writing things right now.
Yeah.
Desecrate's fighting me, but you've been new. But yeah, we're just vibing in the land of drafting and redrafting right now. So nothing really that I can think of off the top of my head to mention specifically.
What would you say is your favorite thing with the books you have published? Like each of them.
That is a good question.
It can be something small or something big.
I think one of the things that immediately comes to mind for like Call Me Icarus, one of my favorite things is like the community reception to horseshoe crabs. And the fact that every time I've met like one of my author friends in real life, it has been accompanied by the acquisition of a horseshoe crab. I have like 2 plushy horseshoe crabs and like a little like rubber toy version of one. I have like an art print of a horseshoe crab. Like everybody just keeps bringing me horseshoe crabs. I think that is my favorite thing about Call Me Icarus, because I put a lot of myself into my book. I wrote about my fear of horseshoe crabs, and everybody went, I know how to make this better. We can get you horseshoe crabs. So I guess you could consider it a kind of like exposure therapy, because now we're chilling now. Yeah. But horseshoe crabs are just like a thing now. And I kind of love that, because it was really just like a throwaway thing that I wrote into the book. I think other than that, like if I had to choose something that's not related to necessarily the community, then my favorite thing about Call Me Icarus is Icarus's assholeness. I don't know how else to say it. This man looks his problems in the eye and goes, I'm going to be a bigger problem for you. And I love that so much. It is so fun to write. He is the biggest threat in the room to himself. It's just so much fun. I would say then for Incorrect Eyes, my favorite thing about it is the exact opposite. I love how like timid the main character is, how like he takes like 20 steps back in trying to figure things out. He's like actively running from his problems despite them being directly in front of him. It's very fun to write those dichotomies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can see that, and I
And
feel like
I'm very excited for that main character to make another little cameo and Desecrate and still be that coward, like timid character.
I remember reading like the first time I read Incorrect Eyes, and I was like in the middle of it. I was like, oh shit, I have to go and get my laundry, like in a building over there, and I just like,
Oh man.
are something watching me right now?
Incorrect Eyes. That was a time. I definitely think it's one of my favorite things I've written so far, just in the ability to like really put forward the fear that I was able to do, the paranoia.
Yeah.
Because it's like I've read so many like horror stories that just like lack the paranoia aspect of it, and that is something that like draws me in.
Yeah, that's why horror is fun. You want to feel scared. Or at least that's how I
And it's
feel.
not even just like the being scared of like what's happening around you, but the active paranoia of your brain working
Yeah.
against you with it.
Yeah. And I remember like it was in the middle of the day too. So it wasn't like this shouldn't be scary. Why are you doing this to me? Absolutely loved it though.
My favorite feedback from people who have read any of my stories is, why would you do this to me? So I take that. I like pin it to my chest. It's like a little medallion. I love it.
Call Me Icarus felt a bit more comforting than Incorrect Eyes. Also like
As much as like Call Me Icarus is meant to also be like confronting, it is also comforting in the way that the characters are handled. So
and it was a lot like I felt like my teenage self was seen. I think that's what really like made it feel comforting.
Big
I
goals
do
were
remember
achieved there with
the
that.
energy drink situation.
Listen, energy drinks are they were monsters in my head. It was just monsters the entire way through the book. But like I think one of the things that really interests me about the book is because it is told exclusively through Icarus's eyes and through his perception of time and perception of everything. It's kind of hard to tell where like the days end, because Icarus himself deals with like perception issues around time. So he's constantly drinking a Monster. And I've had multiple people that are like, that man needs to like stop drinking Monster. And I'm like, this is taking course over like 7 days. And he drinks like 4 or 5 Monsters. It's not that bad, I promise. Icarus just cannot tell what time it is at any given point.
I think for me it was more like, did he just drink it room temperature and not ice cold?
I do regret to inform you that this Monster I have right here that I'm drinking is in fact room temperature.
I do know now. Since then. Can't relate, but I can accept it.
I've had like some of my coworkers even just every time they see me open like a can of something, even if it's like an Arnold Palmer or something, they'll just like look at me and they're like, "Ugh, room temperature." It's like cold to the touch, but it's like it's not coming out of a fridge.
I think I've heard somewhere that like room temperature water is good for you or something, but I'm like, I need it ice cold.
It couldn't be me. Me and my sensitive little teefies. I like chilled things, but I don't like cold.
It's a good reason though. You have a good reason.
Yeah, I suppose. I also just like am a being of chaos, and I live to make other people confused. So every time I'm like, yeah, I drink at room temperature, and people are like, I'm like, goal achieved.
I remember like reading it and I was like, wait, what did I just read?
Yeah.
And like it wasn't even
it's the Andy
like,
effect.
It was more like, did I miss something? Because it was so small.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is with like writing that is I didn't realize it wasn't a normal thing until I think you pointed it out, and then my coworker also did, like within a week span of each other, and I was like, what? Okay. Okay, I see I am in hostile territory now.
But that's kind of like what makes both Icarus and like other people interesting, like small quirks that you don't realize isn't normal.
Yeah, those small quirks are things that I live on. I love giving people like characters random small quirks to their life.
I also want to ask another pronunciation.
Okay.
Because the Christmas story, I never know what to call it when I say it or like think it in my head.
That is Kayama.
Kayama?
Kayama, yes. It is an Attic Greek word and a modern Greek word that means winter or storm.
So perfectly fitting for the story.
Yeah. Yes. Really much fitting like within the Call Me Icarus dichotomy of like the title really just fits what's going on in the story.
How do you decide on titles? Because I think your titles are always like hitting the point and I always struggle.
Titles are so fun. It's weird for me, I think. So specifically with Call Me Icarus, the story, like the story started with the title. So Call Me Icarus was the first thing I knew about the story. And then I built like the everything around it. And I was like, I want to have a Greek name for the title. And I had been operating on like little code names for each of the stories because Call Me Icarus, just in general, was a wild time. Started off as a trilogy, then became a single book, and then it was expanded into a duology, and then it became a trilogy again. So like every time I did that, like different like code names for the books changed. And I had been operating on like eventually I want a Greek name for these titles, but the code names for them were like for the first book because it relies so heavily on like immolation imagery. I was like, this is the book of burning. And then like the next book is this is the book of destruction. This is, and then the final book is like, this is the book of, I can't say that one because that's a spoiler. So when I like had those and I was operating on those kinds of names, I was like, well, let's look at Greek words, specifically Attic Greek words, because my degree, my minor for my bachelor's degree was Attic Greek. So I looked through like a bunch of Attic Greek and even like Doric and Ionic Greek stuff, because that's very similar like time period, to find a word that fit exactly what I was like basically already calling it. So that was how I found Dios, which is a Doric Greek word that means burning or consuming. And then diaphtheta was easier to find because it's both an Attic Greek word and a modern Greek word that means disaster or destruction. And then the final book, I already have the title picked out. It's going to be Apothneasko, which is going to be, first off, wild to teach people to pronounce. Second, it's going to be wild to put on the like, spine of the book because it's a long word. And it has an iota subscript letter, which is just hard to type in general because it's like a little thing on the bottom of the letter, and computers don't like that. So it's like those ones were easy because I was already calling it something. And then once Kayama came around, I wrote it and I was like, well, now I need to fit the theme. But this is really just like a cozy winter story. So I don't want it to be like anything too dark and heavy like the other titles. So I just went for the generic like winter storm word. And then Incorrect Eyes was something completely different because now at this point, like I've established myself as having one word titles and I really like that. And I would like to stay within that. And then Crypt in the shit show chat was just like, I have a title and nothing to write for it. And I was like, I'm yoinking this. Thank you. And then the story of Incorrect Eyes was built around the title.
Oh.
So I really had the title first and then everything else fell into line after. Because then it was like, well, now I have the title Incorrect Eyes and I need to figure out what to do with eyes around it. Because like, it is such a good title.
Yeah.
And then like the only other titles that I have are for ones that are going to be published in the future. But all of those started as like operating whip names. So like Desecrate, my book that's going to come out next year, I was calling it Desecrate Whip because it's a book in which something gets desecrated. And then Desecrate just stuck as a title for me because it's one word, it's very evocative, and now it's there.
Yeah.
So we just I don't know. They like I have working names and then either I translate it into a different title or to a different language, or I just leave it as it is, like Desecrate. The titles are just a little weird because I have those before I can work on the actual story for the most part.
That makes sense. I did not have a title for Keep Me Breathing until like really late, and it was so hard to get the title.
Completely understandable. I was like that for Condemn Me, a story that I have in Reverent.
Right here.
Oh, amazing. I wrote the story. I had the idea for the story. I wrote it, and I was about to like submit it to Reverent. And I was like, I don't have a title for this. What do I name it? So then I went to Quinn, who is the editor and the curator for that anthology. I was like, this is like the operating name that I have for it. I don't know if it fits. And then they read it and were like, no, Condemn Me fits. And it's like, okay, sold.
Perfect.
This is how it's saying. So like, it's finding that name even late in the story, because you're looking at this whole thing. It's like, how do I boil this entire story down to a title?
Yeah, it's easier if you have like the small thing and just build around it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I find. But sometimes when you do it the other way, you do get good titles that like last, like Condemn Me or Keep Me Breathing, because that is a great title. So it happens. You just sometimes it's at the beginning, sometimes it's at the end. Usually it's at the beginning for me because I need a title before I can do anything with it.
Yeah, my later things are the title comes first, like The Strong, the Stray, and a Punk. I love that title for the next Infernal Cave book.
Such a good title.
I had only that and like 2 characters, and I like, you have to do something. It took like a year to get even a plot. But now it's...
It happens.
Thinking of you
sometimes
almost every time I write it, because I think Caleb is perfect red-headed
I'm so excited.
Punk with the wolf.
Sold. Sold. I love this. I can't wait to read it. Titles, man. They're wild.
But before we move into the mythology things even more,
yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like, why did you decide to self-publish? Because I think that's always interesting to know the reasoning behind.
So the reason I self-published is Call Me Icarus. I started writing Call Me Icarus during the pandemic. The entire writing period, including revisions and rewriting to make sure everything was perfect, was about a year before I published it. I had finished the story in a couple months in 2022, coincidentally right after I had surgery. And it was like a big thing with my recovery to be able to work on that. And then I was editing it, I was polishing it, and I was querying it because I wanted to be traditionally published at the time. That was my big goal. And I had gotten it in front of a couple agents. I had gotten, I think, 1 or 2 full requests. And then I got some very kind words from another agent after a full request who basically said, this story is great. It has the possibility to be amazing, but I don't think I can sell this to a publishing house. I don't think there is a publishing house that will touch it because of how heavily entrenched in politics it is. Because this book being written during a time where I was struggling with like the pandemic and with my health and with everything, and with it being a very anti-establishment book, it is my politics in a book. It is my beliefs that capitalism is killing us all, and that disability necessarily isn't the end of the world, and that being trans is just a thing. It shouldn't be political, even though it is. So like how entrenched in politics it is, and how unabashedly queer and trans Icarus is, I was basically just told that publishing wouldn't touch it. So therefore I published it because this was like the story of my heart. It's going to be out in the public. At that time, I had plotted out and I have everything ready for books 2 and 3 pretty much. I just have to sit down and finish drafting them. Since I have published the first book, everything has happened with the United States and the United States very quick descent into fascism. And I'm like looking at these books and I'm like, well, now is the time for these books, because this is like the exact shit that I'm talking on in the book. But it's also hard for me to write them right now because I'm actively living it. It's like I went self-publishing because the story needs to be told. Little did I know I'd be telling it when it was happening.
Yeah. It's been crazy, even like looking from afar.
Well, good news is other elections have happened across the world. And a lot of liberal parties are coming into power. I love that for them. Wish that were us. But, shit happens. We'll make it through this.
Yeah.
Somehow. I'm too stubborn to die. I'm going to kill somebody on the hill that we will get through this.
That's perfect.
I've also started saying that because the phrase is like, I'll die on this hill. I don't have the time or the mental ability to die on a hill right now. I will kill somebody on this hill.
Yeah, I've also like heard it in other places, and I think gets the point across.
I think it does. So, but that's why I went with self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Since I have self-published, I have also been watching the downfall of traditional publishing because the traditional publishing sphere has been on the decline for many, many years now. But now that I'm much more on the inside of it, I can see it better. And especially within like the past 2 years with like the rise of AI and everything, like there's no way I would submit anything to a traditional publishing house right now because like the chance that they throw AI slop onto it, not risking it.
Nope. That's the whole reason why I decided that I'm gonna learn to draw.
Yeah.
Out of spite.
Understandable. So it's been a time in the publishing sphere.
And it's like a lot of things just circulating over and over again.
Yeah. And I don't want to have to censor my own stories in order to appease a publisher.
No, especially not with such important stories.
Exactly. And like I always look to like AJ White as inspiration with like You Weren't Meant to Be Human is his adult story coming out, I think this year. But Hell Followed With Us and like his other stories, because he has managed to publish very trans, very queer political stories. And it's so refreshing to see somebody who did make it through with that, because it is so rare to see like books that heavy get pushed through, essentially. So I look to him for inspiration.
It's always good to have inspirations.
Okay, headphones are back. I don't know why they disconnected. The wild shit, but...
Technology.
Okay. Technology, for sure.
Do you think mythology, and do you call, or apart from Greek mythology, it's a lot of, like, Catholic related things? Would you categorize that under mythology or religion?
That comes into the fun distinction of where is the line between religion and mythology. So, as you know, I have a classics degree. Some of the classes that I took, I kind of rode that thin line between like religious-based classes and mythology-based classes, because that's kind of where my interests lie. And one of the classes we took was Greco-Roman magic, where we spent like the entire semester trying to define magic versus religion versus everyday practices. And it is really hard to do that. There are hundreds of different definitions out there that include different things, but that line is so blurry. The one that we ended up using for the class is the here, the there, and the everywhere. So that is like, the here is the stuff that you'll do in your own house. That is considered magic because it's things that you wouldn't do out in public. So it's like your daily rituals at home kind of thing. The there is the things that would happen in a specific place, which is what would be considered religion. Because that's the things that happen in the church. That's the thing that happen in like rituals and stuff like that. And then the everywhere is things that you can do literally anywhere in public. And that is just considered daily cultural practices. And even then, the line gets really blurred because like with Catholicism specifically, I was raised Roman Catholic. So like Roman Catholicism has like you pray at your bed every night, and that is a here practice. So that could be magic. But like you also have mass that you went to every Sunday, and that was a there, so therefore religion. Or you have everyday practices where like I know that I used to pray out in the park and stuff like that, and like do things in public. I mean, I even still, like, this is a tribute to my grandfather, but I still wear a cross, and that is like an everywhere thing. So like that would be considered a cultural practice, but it also is religion. And mythology ties into that. Because like as somebody who I currently am pagan, so a lot of my actual religious practices I do in an everywhere kind of sense, because specifically I work with death. So like I go to cemeteries frequently. There's death in everything, like the end of a story, the end of a season, stuff like that. So to be out in the changing of the seasons and things like, so that's where like mythology ties in with that, because that is more mythology based. And then you have like mythology things in the home of like reading the myths at home, but then you also learn about the myths in class, which is a there thing. Like it's so weird to define. I went on a tangent, but it's hard to find that like middle ground. So I would define Catholicism and their beliefs as a form of mythology, just as like I would classify mythology as a form of religion, especially for Hellenic pagans and revivalists and reconstructionists and stuff like that. It's hard to define, but I would define them both as religion and mythology for both of them. Just because I have a stronger tie to one having grown up in it doesn't mean that it's also a mythology to other cultures.
How did your interest in both of these things start?
You have activated my trap card. I was a weird, nerdy kid growing up. It's basically what it boils down to. For the Roman Catholicism end of things, because I was raised Roman Catholic, I was raised in a very strict religious family, and I was actually on track, or hoping to be on track, I should say, to be a priest when I was a kid. Gender didn't exist to me as a child. I was raised as a little Catholic girl. Could not have been a priest, but I wanted to. I think I could now, but at the time I could not. But I was very devout growing up. And then I started getting into Greek mythology because I picked up books at school. And actually, that's not even true. Hold on. Even before that, I was raised on it because I found in my grandpa's book collection, and in his book collection is a book that he gave me when I was a kid. And it's like a really old mythology book. So I grew up on the myth and Shakespeare and a bunch of like fairy tales, folk tales. And then in middle school, I got really into Percy Jackson and picked up a bunch of those books. So I started getting into these books, and then that interested me more in like the stories of Catholicism, because Catholicism is very similar to the myth structure in that we have saints and like all the stories that we grew up with in the Bible and everything. And I started having an interest in knowing all of them like I did with mythology, which then also happened to lead to me leaving the church and having more of an outside scholarly interest in it, which was reignited by my classics degree when I took a class called Ancient Christianity, where I got to do exactly that, where I got to look into like the stories and just associate them with the historical period of like the start of the Catholic Church. And we got to like look into the stories specifically and like figure out like where they came from, what beliefs they came from, how they came to be in the Bible. So that building interest really came from a childhood interest in like folk tales, in fairy tales, in mythology, while also mixing with my past devout background.
I feel like that comes through, but like for me it's always so interesting because Sweden is very much religion exists, we learn about it, but it's not more than that.
It's always so fun talking to people who don't have like the religious backgrounds, because it's like you really have to come to the perspective of, oh my God, I was raised in a cult every time you talk to somebody about it.
That's kind of
every
how
time I
it
explain like
sometimes.
a random Catholic thing. Yeah. Every time I talk about a random Catholic thing, I'm just like, I see everybody's reaction, like specifically from people who weren't really raised religious. And I'm like, oh, that was a cult thing. Okay.
We're just heavily religious. Like Sweden is also based on Christianity, but another side part. But it's not like it shows through in how our society works and some of our values, but not more than that.
Understandable. I also happen to, not only was I raised very strictly Roman Catholic, but my family is from like the northern Appalachia region. So I was raised very strictly Roman Catholic with very deeply entrenched Irish Catholic heritage. So it's like double whammy all around.
And I was just here like, ooh, I'm reading fairy tales about trolls.
Yeah. But the trolls are so cool.
Like Scandinavian trolls and like drawings of trolls. I love them.
Mm-hmm. Big fan of trolls. They're just they're so fun. And like other folktales from like the Germanic regions and the Celtic regions just interest me so much, because what do you mean? What do you mean there's this little creature who looks a little funky, whose like whole purpose is to just kind of exist and be an inconvenience to you? It's me. I love them.
And like huge trolls are also like, what do you mean? They are just there eating sheep. So you had religion and I had trolls.
I love that so much. I did kind of just have a little hodgepodge of everything, because my grandpa was a huge history person, and like he always had a fascination with like U.S. history specifically, but that didn't stop him from also getting history from literally everywhere, because he loved folk tales, he loved fairy tales, and he really passed that on to me, because he was like, this is our history right now. Like I harp a lot on oral traditions when I'm talking about like how I create my stories, because a lot of Greek and Celtic stories are oral traditions. They are passed down through the telling of the story. But like the Iliad was, because the Iliad wasn't actually written down until hundreds or thousands of years after it was first created. So like stuff like that. And he made sure to pass that down to me as well, because he was like, this is our history, these stories. You can't know our history without knowing the culture of it.
Yeah.
That was another thing that led me to like writing more dark fantasy with my stories. It's like taking like the mythology and the fairy tales that have been like sanitized, oddly gory and weird, like stories.
They are supposed to be weird and gory.
Yeah, they're supposed to be off-putting, and that is what we're going back to.
Support that 100%. But also,
big fan of that.
Like, you, part of your degree are with a lot of mythology, if I've understood it correctly, which
yes,
I did not even realize that was possible until I got to know you. So that's super cool.
Thank you. It was a time.
Did you have like other ideas of what you wanted to do when you chose to study this, or was it like I'm gonna do straight on there?
I actually do. So this is a fun story, because my undergraduate spanned the pandemic, which changed a lot of things. So when I first went into college, I went in with a chemistry and physics double major. One of my life goals for many, many years before this was to become an analytical chemist. And if I couldn't become an analytical chemist, I wanted to be a nuclear chemist. I still hold those once near and dear to my heart. They're not going to happen now. But I went in with that expectation. And then I, within the first semester, dropped physics and picked up psychology, mostly because the college I went to, Washington and Jefferson College, their physics department is nasty. It is hard. It is difficult. And the way that they do their chemistry program is, because the school is so biochem and medical based, they throw you into the deep end with chemistry first. So very like first semester, I was in organic chemistry 1. And that was in 7:40 a.m. organic chemistry 1. And I was like, we're not doing physics on top of this. No, wrong, incorrect. So I picked up psychology because that was something that had always interested me. So I could still have that dual degree, but not have to do the physics. And then So chemistry was going really well. I really enjoyed organic chemistry 1 and 2, and like had started to shift a little bit from the expectation of wanting to be an analytical chemist to wanting to be a research chemist. And I wanted to do more focus on organic chemistry specifically. And then the pandemic happened. My grandpa passed in January of 2020, not related to COVID or anything, but then COVID hit that middle of that semester. And with my grandpa's passing being like on the forefront of everybody's mind, because specifically me and my mom, we were both very close to my grandfather. He was like a father figure to me, and he was quite literally my mom's father. It was a lot. And then the pandemic hit, and my mom worries about things a lot. So like with my health getting worse, she was like, I want you home. So she was like, if anything were to happen, I need to be able to get to you. So I transferred to Kent State University in Ohio, because that is close enough to where I live, and I was able to move back in with my mom. Things were fine, except they didn't accept my chemistry credit. And at that point, I was going into my junior year as a college student. They wanted me to completely restart my chemistry degree as a junior. I already had 2 years worth of chemistry credit, including a full year of organic chemistry that I was not going to redo. So when I realized that after 6 months of fighting, it wasn't going to happen, I changed my degree. And at that point in my life, my mom was like, I just need you to graduate. Like, I don't even care what you have anymore. Because my mom was like, I was the kid in the family that was like not allowed to be artistic. I was the one who had to go into the sciences. I had to be like the shining star example. But once the pandemic hit, my mom was like, I don't care what you do, just get a degree. So I was like, haha, check off. I'm doing classics. So I switched to my classics degree. I picked up the minors in Latin and Attic Greek, and then I graduated with that. But yeah, so I went in for nuclear chemistry and came out a classicist.
Great turn of events.
Big fan of how that happened.
Absolutely. Do you think you would have still like gotten into writing books if you had stayed on the intended path?
I don't think so, actually, because it was switching to the classics degree that made me realize I actually do enjoy writing, because like I'm really good at writing. I have been writing for my entire academic career and getting very high grades on my academic writing, but that was on academic writing. So being in a class that forced me to create even just like a short creative writing project kind of made me realize like, oh, I can do things that tell these stories without having to have the rigid structure of academic writing. Like, I don't have to keep all of my thoughts, all of my opinions out of this. I can actually just create a story based on my thoughts and opinions. So I don't think I would have. I think at that point in my time with everything, like the story of Call Me Icarus would have still been something in my head, but I don't think I would have actually written it into a novel at that point without having my classics classes.
Then we're even more thankful.
Very, very thankful to have that outlet given to me.
What would I do with my shelf if you weren't there, you know?
Exactly. I wouldn't have written the perfect story for our teenage selves.
Yeah, exactly. And I would not have the book that I have decided that I will be buried with this book. So
I'm gonna cry.
You deserve it. You made me cry so many times.
Oh my God. Having crying inflicted on me for writing the stories that I do.
You deserve it.
Wild.
But you deserve the good crying.
Yeah.
Not the mean, bad things.
Lowen might inflict that on me. I think between you two, like, I like sharing my stories and stuff and sharing my ideas and everything. And you're a part of the shit show that gets that direct from my brain. Yeah. But it's so funny because between you being like, you deserve to cry for the good things because you made me cry. And then Lowen just being like, I am inflicting psychic damage upon you for the things you have done to me.
But it's like the times you have made me cry are like very thoughtful things. And I'm like, no, I don't deserve this.
Well, you deserve all the goodness in the world. And I will continue to inflict that upon you.
I'm counting on it. That's why I sometimes have the bravery to be active and say things in the shit show.
Yeah, well, you're always welcome to. We love you there. Most of that's just the bully Andy server anyways.
Maybe. That's
yeah.
That's why it's such a good community.
Create a group chat with your friends. It'll be so normal. It's the bully Andy server.
I still remember when you posted about starting the server on Tumblr. Would love to join, but I don't dare do it without being invited.
And then I think I literally just added you, like, get in here.
Yes.
A lot of that was literally me just being like getting the laugh. So like, get in here.
Yeah, I think that's part of why I'm always like thinking of you as one of the first friends I made in the writing community.
Oh, I'm honored.
Which is also why it's
I am
a lot
very
easier.
glad to be your friend. Yeah. Yeah.
What tip would you give your younger self in terms of writing, publishing, author life?
I think my biggest tip that I would give my younger self for publishing is to just do it. Don't think of how people are going to perceive what you're publishing, because I don't like to be perceived or seen for anything. So the thought of people like reading my book terrifies me, especially writing the books that I did in the scenes that they open on. Like I go to shows all the time. They ask me to describe my book and I'm like, well, it's this, and they're like, I want to read it so bad. And it's like, okay, I need you to know that this book opens on a scene of immolation. I need you to know. It'll be fine. So I would say for my past self, don't worry about that. If somebody's picking up your book and wanting to read it, they're either going to make it past their scene or they're not. And it's not up to you to decide if they're okay with that. So just don't worry about how your books are going to be published or perceived when they're published. Just do it.
I think that's great advice. And I think like most of us are probably scared to have other people read the things, especially since they come so close to ourselves.
Yeah. I've also been told I'm really good at describing like really gross injuries. So that also made me nervous, specifically opening with the scene of immolation. So like, just don't worry about that. just keep moving forward. It'll be fine.
If they don't get past it, they're not your crew.
If they don't make it past that scene at the very beginning, they're really not going to like book 2. So like, it's a good tone setter.
Do you have another like author friend you would like to like highlight and why?
There's so many. Honestly, I love all of my author friends, and I've made so many over the past couple years, including you and including everybody in the shit show. It's hard to choose just one person to highlight. I would absolutely love to give you that shout out because you are an amazing author, and I don't think I got to tell you. I'm like halfway through Keep Me Breathing, and I'm in love. Because there's you, there's Alex, there's Taylor, there's so many people that I would love to shout out. I think very genuinely right now, though, I would like to just shout out Harvey Alex Rivas. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing their new married last name Right. I think it's Rivas. I will have to ask them about that. They published last year A Sharper, More Lasting Pain, which is one of the books of 2024 for me. It also shares a publishing day with Call Me Icarus. We didn't realize until after it was published, just 1 year apart. And we have been on a writing journey together with our next releases, which are also going to release very close to each other next year. And I am very happy to call them a friend and be on this writing experience with them. We both have very similar drives for learning, and it's always fun to wake up to info dumps in my DMs about things that they're learning for their book and be able to reciprocate that with things that I'm learning for my book.
Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite books last year too, actually.
A Sharper, More Lasting Pain was so good. Etienne LaChance, my boy.
Yes.
I love him.
Yes.
He is such a sopping wet, pathetic man. I want to pick him up, just like scruff him, and be like, stop. Yeah. You guys have all just been such amazing friends for me. I think I scruffed Alex around the same time I scruffed you. And just put you in my pocket. But it's always amazing to find genuine connections in the writing circles. And I think you two have been some of my most genuine connections so far.
Even though I'm just quiet or sending weird things sometimes.
Sometimes you just gotta have that person in the corner who's like, when they do contribute to the conversation, you're like, oh shit.
I remember.
And then 9 times out of 10, when you do contribute to a conversation, it's to bully me.
For the record, sometimes I do like send you possum pictures when I see you're having a rough day.
I do love the possum pictures.
Why I saved them.
Oh my god, I'm so honored. He's Andy Possum Boulder.
Basically.
Amazing. I love that so much.
Thank you so much for like having this conversation with me. And
thank you for asking me to come have this conversation with you. I had fun. I think this was great.
Yeah. Now, this was super fun, and I have other author chats lined up for a few months going forward. And I am so excited to continue this series, and I hope you enjoyed it and will enjoy future episodes as well. But for today, thank you so much for watching, have a great adventure, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!